John Carpenter's Toxic Commando is the kind of game that throws you into the middle of the chaos and doesn't give you time to breathe. Zombies everywhere, explosions, and an action pace that only gets better once you start mastering its mechanics. But to truly shine in missions and not just be another face among the undead, there are some secrets and strategies that make all the difference. So today, I'm going to share 10 advanced tips you need to know to play like a true commander of the apocalypse. Come with me. I'm Matthew, and the video is about to start. Since Toxic Commando works on cooperation between different squad roles, the strategy of splitting the squad into two vehicles fits perfectly with the game's logic. To me, this is one of those tips that sounds simple on paper, but in practice completely changes the rhythm of a long mission. The great value here lies in not putting everyone into the same problem at the same time. When one vehicle is responsible for using the winch to clear a path or pull an obstacle, the other remains free to control enemy pressure and maintain constant covering fire. This makes the advancement much cleaner, because the team doesn't stop playing just because one car had to take on a more vulnerable role. Personally, I really like this type of rotation because it gives a sense of a well-organized operation, almost as if the squad is always one step ahead of the chaos. Instead of 4 players reacting desperately to whatever appears, you create a small tactical structure. One vehicle solves the map, the other solves the threat. And when that clicks, the traversal stops being just survival and starts feeling like total dominance of the situation. The most interesting thing is that this strategy also reduces that classic mistake of convoying everything in a single car and becoming a walking target. Separating into 2 vehicles distributes risk, improves the team's field of vision, and gives more room to correct mistakes without collapsing the entire formation. If I were explaining this tip to someone who is going to play seriously, I would say, without exaggeration, that this rotation is one of the smartest ways to transform a long journey into a controlled advance. If you're reaching the higher difficulties and feeling like your squad just can't handle the pressure, I need to tell you something. The problem probably isn't your aim, your gun, or your level. The problem lies in the team composition. Running with 4 of the same class might seem like a good idea on paper, but in practice, it's a surefire recipe for failure, and I learned that the hard way. The game has 4 distinct classes: Strike, Medic, Operator, and Defender, and each was designed to fill a specific role on the battlefield. The Striker is a horde clearing machine with that fireball that covers area and returns energy with every kill, while the Defender enters the fray as a true tank, deploying that protective barrier that blocks projectiles, damages enemies inside it, and in advanced builds, literally sticks to the player's body to become a mobile defensive platform. When these 2 work together, the dynamics change completely. The synergy between the Defender and the Strike is the heart of any squad that wants to survive on very hard. The Defender absorbs heavy damage, holds the line, and buys the necessary time, while the Strike uses that space to literally blow up everything on the screen. Without the Defender, the Strike is exposed and runs out of energy because they can't get fast enough kills. Without the Strike, the Defender can take the pressure, but lacks the damage to clear the horde before the next spawn arrives. They need each other, and it is exactly this balance that the game was designed to reward. So before you jump into the next tough mission, stop for a second and look at your squad. If everyone chose Strike because more damage is better, you're going to regret it in the middle of the horde with no one holding the line. Distribute the roles, ensure at least 1 defender is on the team, coordinate with your Strike on who goes front and who clears the flank, and you'll notice an absurd difference in survival. Composition beats raw power every time in this game, believe me. There's a mechanic in this game that I used completely wrong, and worse, ignored entirely. That can be the difference between surviving a chaotic horde or watching the entire squad get swallowed by the mutant tide. I'm talking about the ping system, and if you, like me, only used it to say, hey, go this way, you're wasting one of those most powerful tools the game gives you. The radial ping has a specific function that completely changes combat logic. When you mark an elite enemy with it, that red icon appears over the enemy's head and signals to your entire squad, including bots, that this target needs to be eliminated now. It's like screaming full focus without needing to say a word into the mic. And this matters more than it seems, because an elite in the middle of a horde is exactly the kind of threat that goes unnoticed while everyone is busy shooting the common zombies around them. The classic mistake I see all the time is the squad getting so focused on clearing the mass of normal enemies that an elite breaks the line completely before anyone notices. Then it becomes that chaos of everyone trying to correct at the same time, and usually it's already too late. When you ping the elite immediately upon identifying it, you centralize the damage focus before it becomes a real problem. The squad responds, the bots respond, and the elite enemy dies before getting close to the defensive line. So build this habit now, identify elite, ping immediately, don't wait for it to get close, don't wait for someone else to notice, and don't underestimate the red icon thinking it's just cosmetic. On higher difficulties, where elites appear in the middle of dense hordes and have enough resistance to survive distributed damage, the radial ping stops being a convenience and becomes an absolute survival necessity. Abuse this mechanic. Everyone who plays Toxic Commando knows the winch as a basic survival tool. You're stuck, the car sank in the mud, you use the winch and solve the problem. Simple, functional, and completely underutilized. Because if you're using the winch only for that, you're ignoring one of the most creative and lethal mechanics the game puts in your hands from the start. The winch has offensive uses, and it is devastating when applied correctly. Enemies in the middle of a horde are perfect targets to be dragged directly into a kill zone, whether it's an area with fire, explosives, obstacles, or simply away from the squad's defensive line. You don't need to spend bullets on everything in front of you if you can literally reposition the threat before it reaches you. This completely changes how you think about crowd control. But what many people don't realize is that the winch also interacts with the environment in ways the game doesn't directly explain. Heavy supply crates that seem inaccessible at first glance, reinforced doors blocking loot areas. The winch forces these structures in a way no weapon can. On higher difficulties, where every supply matters and every second counts, knowing where to use the winch to unlock hidden resources can be the difference between the squad having enough ammo and healing or arriving dry at the next horde. So stop for a second and start looking at the environment differently. See an elite enemy coming, drag him away. See a heavy door blocking important loot, the winch opens it. See a group of mutants piled up, drag the leader into an explosion. The winch is a complete tactical tool the game gives you right at the start, and the sooner you stop treating it as a terrain accessory and start treating it as a weapon, the better your performance will be in the game's most chaotic situations. This tip is incredibly strong because it completely changes the reading of the defender at the end of progression. At level 15, the Aegis skill makes the defender's dome anchored to the character itself, turning it into a mobile barrier that follows you as the team advances. What I like most here is that the defender stops being just that person who stays in one spot to hold the pressure and starts dictating the team's pace. Since the class was already designed to tank damage, block ranged attacks with the barrier, and punish enemies that enter it, this evolution makes the entire kit finally feel complete. Personally, this is the type of upgrade I value a lot in a cooperative game because it doesn't just improve numbers, it improves behavior, positioning, and squad confidence. Instead of everyone retreating to survive, Aegis encourages coordinated advancement, pushes the front line, and transforms the defender into that player who literally carries the team's safety on their back. To me, the reason this is one of the best level 15 choices in the game is simple. It takes a defensive skill and transforms it into offensive pressure without losing utility. It's that upgrade that, once it enters the build, makes you feel that the defender isn't just protecting the group, but commanding the match and clearing a path through the chaos. The operator is already a class that lives on the move, but when you add the man's best friend upgrade to the build, the drone stops being just support and literally becomes your survival partner. The skill allows the drone to automatically revive fallen allies without you needing to stop, expose yourself, or deviate from the chaos happening on screen. What makes this so valuable in frantic situations is precisely the timing. When the horde is heavy, stopping to revive an ally is often a death sentence for you too. With man's best friend active, the drone handles the problem while you stay on the trigger, maintaining pressure and not leaving the team on the ground for too long. It's the kind of upgrade that doesn't show up in the stats but shows up in the match result. Personally, this is the type of build choice I respect most in a co-op game. One that takes a real gameplay limitation and offers an elegant solution within the class's own kit. The operator already had an identity as support and combat at the same time, and man's best friend solidifies that identity for good. You become the person the team wants to see alive at all costs, because if you fall, the drone falls too, and the safety net is gone. For those playing in less coordinated groups or even in more chaotic sessions, this upgrade is almost mandatory. It forgives mistakes, saves plays that would be tragedies, and provides a peace of mind that completely changes how you advance through the map. The reviving drone is, in practice, a second life circulating the battlefield, and there's no price for that. Deciding to spend spare parts too early might seem harmless, but when the final defense arrives, you realize you should have saved what is much more important than it seems at that moment. The truth is that spare parts are final boss resources, not for just any random shootout. The sludgeite that comes from sludge seeds is one of the big motivators for you to explore more dangerous areas of the map. But the cost is high. Extreme enemy density usually appears there, and the time you lose is precious. The secret is balancing risk and reward. I always try to pass through these zones a bit before the final wave, when I still have the energy to fight but want to maximize what I bring to the defense phase. Personally, I feel the game punishes those who play without a resource strategy and rewards those who can hold the urge to spend everything before the big event. Saving these spare parts is like having tactical life insurance. You can use them exactly when the team is most tired, the horde is at its limit, and any mistake feels like the end. The moment the map closes and the final wave begins is the only place where I really let the spare parts inventory drop. Exploring sludge seeds crystals always before the final wave is a habit very much worth incorporating. Besides extra XP, they give you rare resources that can be the difference between a mediocre upgrade and a solid setup for the last defense. In the end, this tip ends up being almost a game philosophy. The way is to do everything you can to reach the final moment with maximum resources, control, and clarity, rather than with a chest full of regret for having burned everything before the big test. If you're playing as a strike and haven't picked up Shatterblast at level 5, you're literally leaving the class's best power locked unnecessarily. This is the upgrade that turns the fireball into an event. It fragments into smaller explosives that cover a much larger area than the standard attack, and you feel it from the very first shot after unlocking. To me, what differentiates this upgrade from a simple numbers boost is that it changes the player's behavior along with it. Before Shatterblast, you aim, you calculate, you try to hit the projectile dead on. After it, you start shooting with more confidence because you know the fragments will cover angles you weren't even aiming at, penalizing enemies on the flanks and in positions that were previously safe. It's the strongest power spike the strike has early in the game, and the word early matters a lot here. At level 5, the build is still forming, and having this increased area coverage ensures you stay relevant in combat even before setting up any more complex synergies. A strike with Shatterblast doesn't need elaborate support to deliver results. They arrive heavy on their own, and that is exactly why I consider this upgrade mandatory. It demands nothing in return. No setup needed, no combo needed, no ally in the right position needed. You unlock it, you shoot, and the map responds. For a class made to control space with fire, Shatterblast is the moment the strike stops promising and starts delivering. The medic carries a huge responsibility in the squad from the start, but there is a version of it at level 15 that is simply different from everything that came before. When you switch to remote treatment, the healing ring goes away and is replaced by grenades that create regenerative zones at a distance. It's an entire shift in philosophy. You stop being the healer who needs to be close and start being the healer who reaches those no one else can save. What makes this upgrade so valuable is exactly the scenario where it shines. When the Horde isolates an ally from the rest of the team, at that moment, running to heal in person is almost impossible and often a death sentence for both. With healing grenades, you launch the regenerative zone from wherever you are, the ally recovers without anyone needing to commit suicide to reach them, and the entire team remains functional. This is the kind of upgrade I consider smart, because it solves the biggest problem for support in Horde games: distance. Classic support forces you to be in the right spot at the right time, and that isn't always possible when there are 50 creatures between you and a falling ally. Remote treatment accepts the reality of chaos and adapts healing to work within it, not against it. Reaching level 15 with the medic and not taking this upgrade is, in my opinion, wasting the class's most unique feature in the late game progression. The healing ring does the job in controlled situations, but controlled situations aren't what you'll find in the game's toughest stages. Remote treatment is for when everything is going wrong, the team is spread out, and you need to be the person who can still do something useful from wherever you are. The maps in Toxic Commando are larger than they seem the first time you load a stage, and the game relies on that to hide the best rewards in areas you would never pass if you went straight for the objective. Heavy weapons, superior vehicles like the Maverick, critical resources, all of this is distributed along the sides of the map, waiting for those who have the curiosity to explore before pulling the trigger on the main mission. I learned this the hard way, arriving at a heavy confrontation without adequate equipment because I went straight to the marker without taking a lap first. After I started treating scavenging as a mandatory part of every map, the level of control I had in the hardest sections of the campaign completely changed. It's not that the game got easier, it's that I stopped entering the most important fights in the worst possible state. The Maverick is perhaps the most concrete example of this philosophy. It doesn't appear automatically in your inventory, you need to find it. And the difference between facing a heavy section with it or with a basic vehicle is immediate, visible, and quite painful for those who have never made the comparison. When you enter a tough encounter with the Maverick, you start to understand why the game hides these things in the corners. To me, this tip is less about mechanics and more about mindset. Seeing the objective marker and resisting the urge to go straight to it is a skill the game is teaching you all the time. But it only makes sense after you learn from the lack of it. The objective is the destination, but what you find along the way is what decides if you'll get there in a condition to win.